This happened about 2 months ago, but it still doesn't feel real. I'm a 19-year-old geology major, and I've always been obsessed with the desert. There's something hauntingly beautiful about endless rock, sand, and silence. That obsession led me and 2 friends, Travis and Eli, to do a lot of urban exploring in the Nevada wastelands. We weren't vandals or anything. We just liked finding old structures and ghost towns. We'd film stuff, post it to TikTok or YouTube, just for fun. Eli had this map he found in an old mining journal at a thrift store, hand-drawn, frayed at the edges, and supposedly copied from a map made back in the 1800s. There was one marking that caught our eye. Dead Echo Drift, collapsed 1912. Keep out. We joked about it at first, but the name stuck with us. And one Saturday morning, we decided to try and find it. It wasn't on any official record or satellite map. That made it more exciting. Stupid, but exciting. We packed up Eli's 4Runner with supplies: water, masks, flashlights, gloves, ropes, the works. We drove 4 hours off-grid into the high desert, way past where we had signal. The road turned to sand, and sand turned to rock. Eventually, we found it. A crooked wooden structure poking out of a sandstone cliff, almost swallowed by the earth. Time had not been kind to it. The entrance was barely visible under years of wind-blown sediment. There were strange symbols on the beams, scratches that looked too intentional to be random decay. We were already creeped out, but Travis, ever the brave one, said, "Come on, we came this far." We all strapped on masks, checked our headlamps, and went in. The air was stale, like it hadn't moved in over a century. As we walked deeper, the tunnel sloped down in slow spirals. The walls were lined with old timber supports, many of them cracked or warped, and the deeper we went, the colder it got. My ears started to pop like we were going down in elevation fast, but that made no sense. About 30 minutes in, we hit the first junction. The tunnel split 3 ways. Our map was vague, but Eli said, "Left goes deeper." That's the drift they mentioned. The left tunnel was narrower. We had to crouch in places. We passed by rusted rail tracks and shattered wooden carts. At one point, we found a single boot-shaped footprint in the dust. Just one. No matching trail before or after. We stopped. We looked at each other. No one had said anything, but I could tell we were all thinking the same thing. Something about this place felt aware. I know how that sounds. But it felt like we had stepped into something that didn't want to be disturbed. Still, we pressed on. Then we heard the breathing. I thought it was Travis at first. It was this deep, guttural inhale, then long exhale, like someone struggling to breathe but trying to stay quiet. We froze, headlamps off. The breathing continued, slow, wet, raspy, and it wasn't any of us. It echoed through the tunnel in a way that made it impossible to locate. It sounded like it was behind us, then in front, then above. We stood there in the dark, paralyzed. Eli whispered, "Do you smell that?" I did. Copper, like blood. That was enough for me. I turned on my light and said, "We need to leave." That's when we saw the scratches. On the wall to our right, fresh claw marks. Deep, long, and erratic. Something had dragged itself through here. Recently. The layers of dust and rot were disturbed. Something had been walking, crawling, or worse, waiting. We turned back, but the tunnel didn't look the same. It curved sharper. The incline was steeper. The walls weren't timber anymore. They looked like carved bone. I wish I were making that up. They looked pale, smoothed, and ridged like ribs. The wood beams had been replaced with vertebrae. "Guys," Eli said, pointing to the ceiling. "It's moving!" Above us, the rock pulsed, barely visible, but breathing, just like before. The mine wasn't a mine. It was alive. We ran. No coordination, just panic. The tunnel seemed to close in behind us, and the temperature rose like we were in the belly of something. Travis tripped. I grabbed him. Eli screamed, but we couldn't stop. There were voices now, not in front of us, not behind, inside us. They whispered things: regret, despair, regurgitated versions of our own memories. My dad yelling at me when I was 6, Travis's breakup last year, Eli's guilt about his brother's overdose. It felt like the mine was pulling those thoughts out of us, feeding on them. We finally burst back into the main junction. The middle tunnel was gone, caved in completely. Only the right one remained. We took it. That tunnel was smoother, newer, almost modern. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. Except there was no power source. Just a row of lights going forever. We kept running until our lungs burned. Then we saw it. Sunlight. The opening. But it wasn't the one we entered from. We crawled out, collapsed on the desert floor, gasping. It was dusk. We had only been gone an hour and a half by our watches, but the sun said it had been a full day. And the truck? Gone? The area around us was wrong. Rock formations out of place. No tire tracks. No signs we'd ever been there. We walked for hours until we hit an old ranger station. Completely empty. But there was a working phone. We called for help. Authorities picked us up the next morning. When we showed them the map and tried to explain where we'd gone, they told us that mine had been sealed since 1905. There were no tunnels left, no drift, no recent activity. Just a landslide decades ago that made the area unsafe. But we had photos, dozens of them. Only, when we pulled out the camera, every single file was corrupted. Black static. No sound. Not even metadata. We don't talk about it much, but every so often, I have dreams about breathing walls, about screams that echo forever, and about something still down there, waiting for someone else to feed on. I haven't gone back to the desert since, and I never will. I've always liked camping. Not the glamping kind, but real camping, where you have to pitch your own tent, build your own fire, and maybe even dig a hole if nature calls. I live in Arizona, so it's not hard to find remote spots. My buddy Will and I had done forests, mountains, even riverbanks, but we'd never really done a true desert trip. So when Will suggested we take a long weekend and drive out past Gila Bend, somewhere deep into the Sonoran, I was all in. It wasn't just about disconnecting. Will had found this thread on some survivalist forum, talking about an area where the stars were so clear it felt like you were floating in space. Supposedly, it was free to camp, totally untouched. The pictures posted in that thread were unreal. Endless dunes, rust-red rock formations, and not a single soul for miles. So we planned it. 3 days, 2 nights, off-grid. We left early on a Thursday. I drove my beat-up Tacoma, loaded with gear, extra water, fuel, and a satellite GPS. It was a long haul. We turned off the highway onto a dirt path that looked like it hadn't been used in years. And after another hour of bumps and dust clouds, We made it. It was perfect. The landscape was vast, quiet, and just alien enough to make you feel like you'd stepped onto Mars. We set up camp near a large rock outcrop that gave us some shade. By sunset, we were sitting by a fire, beers in hand, just watching the desert turn gold, then purple, then black. The first night was calm, chilly, but nothing unexpected. We told stories, looked at stars, and fell asleep listening to the wind sweep over the sand. But the second night, that's when things changed. We'd spent the day exploring nearby dry riverbeds and strange boulder formations. Around dusk, Will noticed something odd, a large pile of stacked stones in the distance. Not natural, more like someone had intentionally balanced them. I brushed it off, said maybe hikers had passed through, even though we hadn't seen a single other person since we got there. Will seemed uneasy, but we didn't think much of it. That night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to this scratching sound, soft but close. I stayed still, listening. Then I heard it again. Not an animal. Not wind. It sounded like fingers dragging across nylon. I whispered, "Will?" But he didn't answer. I unzipped my tent slowly, flashlight in hand. Nothing. Just darkness and sand. My heart was pounding. I scanned the camp, both tents, the fire pit, the cooler, all normal. Then I saw it. Far off, maybe 100 yards away. Something was standing. Not moving. Just standing. It was tall and thin, almost like a shadow peeled off the night itself. My flashlight barely caught it before it stepped back behind a rise and vanished. I told myself I was imagining it. Lack of sleep. Shadows playing tricks. But I didn't go back to sleep. Will looked pale the next morning. He said something woke him up too. He thought he heard whispering. Like several people talking at once, just outside his tent. I didn't tell him what I saw. Not yet. We debated leaving, but we were both stubborn. We still had one more night and didn't want to admit we were spooked. We should have left. That final night, the wind picked up. We kept the fire going strong, hoping the light would make us feel better. Will tried to joke about the ghost whisperers of Gila Bend, and I laughed, but it felt forced. We were both on edge. Around midnight, we heard it again, this time loud. A howl, deep and guttural, rising out from the canyon beyond the rocks. It wasn't a coyote. It wasn't anything I could identify. Then it came again, closer. Then a third time, even closer. We grabbed our flashlights and weapons. Will had a survival axe, I had a flare gun. We stood back to back by the fire, trying to keep our breathing calm. The howling stopped. And then the whispering started. It came from everywhere, circling us, like voices carried on the wind, overlapping, muttering things we couldn't quite make out. I shouted, "Who's out there?" But nothing replied, just whispers. My skin crawled, my vision blurred, and then I saw movement, not one, but 3 figures. They weren't walking, they glided. Their limbs were wrong, elongated, and swaying. They moved in a triangle pattern around us, circling wider and wider. Will panicked. He threw a rock at one of them, and it vanished the moment it was hit by light. Just gone. The other 2 froze, then turned in unison toward him. That's when I fired the flare. The desert lit up bright as day for a few seconds, enough to see what we were really dealing with. They weren't people. Their skin was mottled and gray, their eyes sunken and wide, mouths slack and full of jagged, unhuman teeth. They hissed, a screech more than a scream, and vanished into the dark again. We ran, left everything, no tent, no cooler, nothing. We sprinted to the truck, barefoot and shaking, climbed in, and tore down that dirt road like it was on fire. The GPS didn't work. It glitched, pulsing and showing random symbols. Will screamed that it was burning hot, and he threw it out the window. I just kept driving. It took us 5 hours to find pavement. The sun was already rising when we reached the first gas station. We sat there in the lot, silent, bloodied from the brush, hands trembling. We tried to report it, but there's nothing to report when you don't even know what you saw. Who's going to believe two guys saw humanoid creatures whispering in the desert? But here's the worst part. About a week later, I got a package in the mail. No return address, just a shoebox. Inside, my camping knife, the one I left behind that night. Clean, sharp, and wrapped in a piece of tent fabric. There were symbols drawn in red ink all over the cloth, and one word scrawled across the blade's handle. Soon. I grew up thinking my mom was just quiet. The kind of person who always had a gentle smile, but never gave too much away. She wasn't cold, not really, but there was always this distance. Like a door in a house you're not supposed to open. We lived in New Mexico, just the two of us. My dad died when I was a baby, and my mom never talked about him much. Anytime I asked, she'd say something like, "He was a good man. That's all you need to know." Then quickly changed the subject. It wasn't just about him either. She didn't talk about her family, her childhood, or anything from before I was born. Just avoid. I'm 26 now. A few months ago, I got a new job doing freelance geological surveys for energy companies. It's good money, but it means I'm on the road a lot, driving through nowhere, taking measurements, snapping photos. That's how I ended up in the middle of the desert, alone, late in the afternoon, with spotty service and a tank half full. The site I had to check out was at the edge of a dried-up riverbed, a good 15 miles from the nearest road. My GPS worked just long enough to get me there, and then, dead. No signal. I figured I'd be out before dark anyway. After taking the samples I needed, I started heading back toward my car. That's when I saw it. A white pickup parked about 100 feet away from my vehicle. It wasn't there when I arrived. I froze. Two men stood beside it, leaning against the hood like they were waiting for me. Neither waved or called out. They just watched. I thought maybe they were locals, ranchers maybe, but something about their stance felt wrong. Too relaxed, too confident. One of them had his hand inside his jacket, like he was holding something. I tried to stay calm and kept walking toward my own vehicle, but by the time I got there, one of them was already halfway to me. He didn't say anything, just looked at me like I was already caught. "Hey," I said. "I was just finishing up some survey work. I'll be gone in a second." Still no response. He stepped closer, then pulled out a knife. Not big, just a switchblade. But the intent was clear. "Wallet, phone, keys," he said in perfect English. I handed them over without hesitation. My heart was racing, but I kept telling myself this was just a mugging. They'd take my stuff and leave me to walk. But then, the other guy, the one by the truck, pulled out a walkie-talkie and said something in Spanish. I didn't catch much, but one word stood out. Entrega. Delivery. I knew then this wasn't just a robbery. I was being taken. The one with the knife gestured to the back of the white truck. "In." I hesitated. "In," he repeated, more forcefully, That's when the weirdest thing happened. My phone started ringing, but I just handed it over. It was in his hand. He looked down, surprised. I saw my own name flash across the screen. My mom was calling me from my phone. The man frowned, answered, and said something sharp in Spanish. Then he stopped. His whole posture changed. I don't know what my mom said. I couldn't hear her voice. But the guy listened. He said, "Sí, sí," like he was agreeing to something. Then he looked at me, suddenly nervous. He handed the phone back like it was hot coal. "Go," he said. I stared at him, frozen. The second guy was watching too, his brow furrowed, like he didn't understand what was happening. "Go!" the first guy shouted. He tossed my keys and phone at me. My wallet followed. I didn't wait. I jumped in the car, started it, and peeled out, kicking up sand and gravel as I bolted. I didn't stop driving until I hit the main road. 30 minutes of winding through desert scrub, heart in my throat the whole way. When I finally found a diner with service, I pulled over and called my mom. She answered immediately. "I'm okay," I said. "But what the hell was that? What did you say to him?" There was a long pause. "Where exactly were you?" she asked, calm as ever. "South of Gallup, about 15 miles off 491. Another pause. "I told him you weren't the one they were looking for, that he'd made a mistake." "How would he believe that?" She didn't respond. "Mom, who did you talk to? How did he know to listen to you?" Another pause. Then she said something that chilled me. "I taught his brother to read a long time ago." I couldn't speak. "There are debts," she continued. "Favors. They don't forget." I wanted to scream. "Favors? Who are you?" She didn't answer, just said, "Don't go back there." And she hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything. The way the man had suddenly gone from predator to panicked. The fear in his eyes when he heard her voice. I started looking through old family albums. Most were empty or staged. No real photos from before I was born. But in one old box, tucked behind a stack of books, I found a newspaper clipping. The headline was in Spanish, but the gist was clear. "Local teacher killed in cartel crossfire." I recognized the photo. A much younger version of my mom, maybe 18, standing beside a little schoolhouse with a group of children. No mention of her name, just that the teacher had been close to a local official and was suspected of passing messages for him. The photo was dated 6 months before she came to America. That was all the confirmation I needed. I don't know who my mother really was, or what she left behind in Mexico. But I know this much. Someone in that desert feared her more than they wanted to kidnap me. And that's not normal. So I don't ask questions anymore. I keep my mouth shut. Because if there's one thing I learned that day, some doors are better left closed.